everyone, it's David. I'm here in my Beatles corner. We're collecting the Beatles, and here's another little 101 video for you. Let's see if we can learn a little something. So, every so often, I do get questions from subscribers and viewers, and this one comes from their user handle is Daytripper. So, we talk about here in the United States, if we're the old-timey, Capitol Records collectors, we talk about, oh, you need to get like a Capitol Rainbow label pressing and stay away from those Capitol Purple label pressings, and the orange labels are okay. But a lot of folks, if you're maybe relatively new to collecting the Beatles, or if you were born back in the 90s, I can't believe people born in the like 1990, let's say, are now like 32 years old. So that's like weird. It's so like weird here. And you might have been brought up on like the Parlophone albums or the the standardized UK catalog, and you're not familiar with the terminology that we use, us old-timey, as old-timers might use in the collecting world. So here's a little video to show you most of the label variations of the Beatles albums here that were issued on Capitol Records. And this is not, we're going to dump on Capitol or anything video. People like to do that, and that's their opinion. So that's fine if you want, if you have, but a lot of us enjoy and cherish and look for the best pressings of these Capitol records. So let's take a look. All right, so I'm going to try to do this in somewhat of an order, and I'm not going to get into different pressing plant variations or anything like that. So here's a general overview. So this is what's called the Capitol Rainbow label. And this is the first version of the Capitol Rainbow label, because there were like 3 variations, major variation or minor. But this black label, Capitol logo up at the top, traditional Capitol logo, and you see that rainbow rim. That's why it's called a rainbow label. And it's manufactured by Capitol Records. So that's the first variation when we say rainbow label. Now, 1968 came out with this variation of the rainbow label, and it's exactly the same, except for the print on this copy of Rubber Soul, manufactured by Capitol Records, a subsidiary of Capitol Industries. So this is what we call a rainbow subsidiary label, and this was around for maybe about 2 years or so until our next variation comes along. Okay, then this is what we call a Capitol green target label. So it's a green Capitol label with this new, what's called the Capitol Target logo on there. And this, I believe, was around 1969, 1970. That this was issued, and this was a pretty short-lived variation. There is also a red version of this label that's an even shorter-lived variation, and if you see those records, they're pretty rare, but apparently up in Canada, from what I've seen, it was a little bit more common at the time. So this is a Target label. As you can see, it's a capital C around what looks like a black record, which also emulates a record player with a needle on a record or tone arm, but it also looks like a Target, so that's why we call it a Target label. Okay, now here we have a copy of the Something New album, and this is on the Apple label. So around, I think it was 71, 72, somewhere in there, Capitol reissued all the Beatles albums, whether they were originally issued on Capitol or Apple, onto the Apple label. So here you go. and this shows manufactured by Apple Records, but there's a couple of variations on that as well, I believe. But yep, there we go. And that's a typical Apple label with a sliced half on the other side, side 2. Now, the Capitol label lasted till about 1976, and Capitol then reissued all the Beatles albums on this orange Capitol label, with that word Capitol at the bottom. A very boring, plain, unexciting label, but Capitol had issued this label in the early 70s. I think it was around the time that the Beatles albums started being issued on an Apple label. Capitol was using this for all their records with some variations. But this is an orange label. Again, not exciting, but still up until this point, heavyweight vinyl, relatively heavyweight. Sound quality is really good. And this was used until 1978 when we got the following label variation. So here's a copy of the Beatles' second album I purchased new in the early 80s. And this is what we call the retro purple Capitol label, because it harkens back to the Capitol record labels of the 1950s or so, or earlier. I wasn't around back then. But now we start getting into a bit thinner vinyl, and it's cheaper, and you know, it's still decent, but not as good as earlier pressings. So when we say, you know, stay away from maybe these pressings on the purple label, that's what we're talking about. But if you also see people say, hey, this is a first pressing album, but it's got this label, this is actually from the 1978 till about 1983-ish. So there you go. And then we've come full circle to the rainbow label. So this was reintroduced on the Beatles album with the Rarities album in 1980. And I believe from 1983 till about 87, when the catalog was standardized and reissued on vinyl, this was in use. And I do not have any 1980s rainbow label albums, but reportedly they're still they sound really good. I'm sure the vinyl's pretty thin and typical for the time, but you know, it is what it is. So there you go. Those are the label variations in a nutshell. So there you have it. Again, just a general overview. So now if you hear somebody talking about how bad an orange label Capitol album sounds as opposed to a rainbow label, now you have an idea of what they're talking about, right? Right. So if you have a question for me and I can answer it, I'm always looking for suggestions on these videos. So I really appreciate it. And I'll try to help you out if I can. All right? All right. So until next time, we'll catch you on the flip side. And it's me, David, in my Beatles Corner. We're talking about the Beatles, collecting the Beatles 101, and we'll catch you later. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for watching Collecting the Beatles 101. And if you are into bourbon reviews, please check out my other YouTube channel, @MyWhiskeyDen. Thanks for watching.